Getting in close can open up many creative opportunities. This image has a reproduction ratio of about 1:1. That is, the view across the subject is about the same size as the width of the sensor in the camera. Now this can be achieved with a dedicated macro lens. However, this image was captured with just a standard prime lens and extension tubes, a very economic alternative. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. Okay, so this is an extension tube, and it's basically just a ring that goes in between the camera lens and the camera body. It just moves the lens further forward, which will enable you to focus at a closer distance. Okay, so these come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes, and what I have here is a kit of 3, and it is fairly common to find these in this sort of configuration. Okay, so the camera that I'm using is a medium format camera, and this has a larger sensor in it than you would find in a full frame format camera. If I just take the sensor off the back of this camera, I can show you that. So this is the sensor, and this is 6 centimeters by 4.5 centimeters. Now the dimensions on a full frame format camera will be different to that, but the thing to bear in mind is that if you want to go for true macro, which is a reproduction ratio of 1:1, then you need to make sure that the subject that you're viewing is roughly the same width across as the sensor in your camera. That will give you a ratio of 1:1. I'll show you what I mean. So I've set up this small demonstration. So at the back here I have this tape measure which will show me the width of the captured image, and at the front here I have my camera on this tripod, and it's tethered into Capture One software, so it's easy to follow along and see the results as I get them. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is just set the lens to its minimum focusing distance. There we are. Now I've placed the tape measure at the back here at that distance, so hopefully it should be in focus. So I'll just check that quickly in the viewfinder, and we'll grab an image and see what we get. There we are, and you can see from this that the width of the image is about 34 centimeters. And that's the size of the subject that I can get at the minimum focusing distance of this lens with no extension tubes in. So what I'm going to do now is put an extension tube in, and I'm going to start with the smallest one, which is this, which is just a 12mm extension tube, and we'll see what size image we get now. So I'll just remove the lens from the camera and replace it with the extension tube in position. Now obviously, having done that, I will change the focus point. So I'm now going to move the tape measure in so that we get a good focus on that. So about there somewhere should do. And I'll just grab that image. And there, you can see from that it's about 18 centimeters. So that 12mm extension ring has made a huge difference to the size of the image that I can now capture. So let's do it again. This time I will put the 24mm extension ring in. And once again, move the subject a bit closer until it becomes in focus. I think about there. And with that, I'll capture that again. And now you can see that it's about 12 centimeters across. So it's a bit of diminishing returns really, but we'll carry on and see how we go. So the next one I'll use is a 36mm extension ring. There we go. I can move the subject in until I've refocused the image, about there, and we'll grab that. As you can see, that's about 9 centimeters. In order to get down to 1:1, what I'm going to do is stack a couple of these together. So I'm going to leave on the 36mm one and also put on the 24mm one. There's nothing to stop you stacking all of them together if you wish. And once again, I'll move the subject in until we get a good focus. There we are. That's about right. So we'll grab that again. And there. Now you can see we have an image which is 6 centimeters across. So that's exactly the same size as the sensor in the back of the camera. So this is a reproduction ratio of 1:1, which I've achieved with 2 extension rings. So this is a very economic way of getting into macro without actually having a macro lens. Okay, so now we've done this little experiment, it's time to set up a proper picture. So I've placed a couple of wooden blocks on the table here just to raise up this piece of slate, and that's what I'm going to be using as the background to the shot. Well, the shot consists of some strawberries, so I've got some which I've pre-cut in here, so I'll just arrange these on the slate like so. So with that I can now point the camera down at the subject. There we are. And now just gently move the subject until it becomes in focus. There we are. So that should do for the time being. So the next thing to do would be just to precisely focus that. So I'm just going to use live view. So I'll just start up live view on the computer here. Then I can use the focusing ring to bring that into a sharp focus, which I think is about there. Okay, so now I can dispense with live view and we'll take a test image just with the house lights. So as a test image, that's not too bad at all. But it's not really lit correctly. I've just used the house lights just for convenience. So what I need to do is light this properly, and what I'm going to do is just use a very small flash just above and behind, about here somewhere. There we are. So this is a relatively small flash head, about the same as a large flash gun. So with the flash now set, what I can do is change the settings to match the flash. So what I want to do is change the aperture. I'm going to pick a relatively small aperture of about f11. I want to try and maximize the depth of field. I may need to go further than f11, but I don't want to go too far. I want enough detail in the out of focus bits. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to change is the shutter speed. So I'm just going to change this to the flash sync speed for that camera, which is 1/125th of a second. So at an arbitrary energy level, what I'll do is grab an image and just see what we get. Okay, so you can see from that it's a very different look to what we had with just the house lights. This was mostly surface illumination, whereas this is mostly translucent illumination coming through the back, which is what I want, but there's just not enough of it yet. So the light's probably not quite in the right place. I think it needs to be a lot closer. So what I'm going to do is just drop this down to about here. I might lower that angle slightly and push the whole lot in. Okay, so with those changes made, I'll grab it again and see what we get this time. Yes, that's starting to work. So this is now starting to become illuminated from the flash behind. I think I need to go a little bit further. So I'm going to just see how close I can get this. There we go, very small movements. Yes, that's starting to illuminate this quite nicely. So in the first instance we had this, then this, and now this. I'm not too bothered about the back here getting very bright. I can always take that down in post-production. So let's zoom in and have a look at the quality of the image. Yeah, this is looking very nice. You've got all the detail here and within the flesh of the strawberry. So that's all coming along quite nicely. Okay, so for actually capturing the image, that's it. It shows that you can just use a standard lens with some extension tubes and achieve a macro result. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is go into Photoshop and do the bare minimum of post-production. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. And the first job would be just to make a duplicate of this so I can keep the camera original in case I need to do a different edit. So the way I'm going to do that is just to go onto the layer here and right-click the mouse, ask for a duplicate layer, but ask for a new document. We'll just call it strawberry. There we are. So Photoshop has made me a new document and I can now shut down the camera original. Like I said earlier, I do want to just drop this background down slightly. So the way I'm going to do that is just to add an adjustment layer. So I'll go on to adjustments and I'll go on to a levels adjustment. I'll generally take that down and reduce the contrast, something like that. Now this is affecting the whole image at the moment. So what I want to do is just go back to layers, and you can see that I have a layer mask on this adjustment layer. So I can now paint onto this layer mask just to take that adjustment off the bits that I paint on. So to do that, I need to make sure that I have black selected as the foreground color. Find a paintbrush and we'll make that a reasonable size and very soft. And now I can just paint that into the areas that I want to stay the same. There we are. So that's with the effect on and that's with the effect off. So it's just taken down these areas at the back and in front of the image. Okay, and I don't think there's very much else to do to this. What I might do is just select a crop. So I'm using this for video, so I've got a specific ratio of 16:9, and I think that's pretty good just as it is. So we'll just OK that. And there we have it. So by stacking up a couple of extension tubes, I've been able to get to a reproduction ratio of about 1:1. And at that sort of level, it opens up a whole new range of creative possibilities without the expense of a dedicated macro lens. And I think overall, that's worked rather well. Okay, well I hope you liked watching how I made that image, and if you like watching these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh, and hit the like button. Thank you very much for watching.